Hey you guys, this is Dawn. Welcome back to Gulf Coast October. In this series, I've been reading my book, Enchanted in Bay St. Yaya. Got to get that thumbnail in there. One chapter at a time, and today I'm reading chapter 10. It's called The Memory Book. If you want to hang out and just kick back and listen while I read this chapter, I would love to have you. Ba-da-boom, ba-doom, boom. So where we left off, Deary has been staying at Bird's, but she's trying to be respectful, and she's starting to notice that there's been some stuff going on, and she's becoming friends with Joe Aloysius. She misses Bird, obviously, but there's some stuff going on around her, and she's starting to realize that this life is more than just what we see right in front of our face. Chapter 10, The Memory Book. It was just after sunrise one early October morning. I had the entire day off, even from crafting, and had decided the night before that I would spend this lovely Saturday doing nothing. All was well with the world, and even better here at the house. Okie Doke, Rudy, and I sat on the porch and enjoyed some scrambled eggs. Okie Doke laid on her back with her legs sprawled up and out, and her mouth was wide open, catching bits that I'd toss her way, while Rudy strutted around picking up the pieces of eggs that Okie missed. The weather felt like nothing, the air felt like nothing, and it almost seemed like there weren't any sounds at all. Even the dog chomping her mouth shut was quiet. It was so quiet that my head did that thing where it makes its own soft mechanical hum. Out of scientific curiosity, I threw a piece of egg away from the dog to see what kind of sound it would make when it hit the ground. Smoosh. This only confused me. This strange state was obvious and peculiar, yet kind of nice. I enjoyed it for a good hour before I became paranoid that maybe I was dead and everybody knew it but me. And just as soon as I started to panic, I heard a crash inside. My attention came back to normal, and I jumped to my feet. Just as I headed for the door, I heard a familiar masculine voice coming from the sidewalk. "Everything okay, Miss Deary?" he asked. I was taken by surprise, and I didn't want to be rude, but I really wanted to know what I'd heard inside. "Lauren, hello. Just a minute if you don't mind. Already running away?" he asked me. His tone was polite yet commanding, and I felt a little bit controlled by it. I peeked through the screen door, but nothing seemed amiss. Okie Doke wanted inside, and this made me feel better, but the bird wanted me to pick him up. "I'm not running away," I said with a fake giggle. "I live here. Anywhere I go, I'm still here, right?" "You have a point." He smiled and took notice of Rudy, who held his beak up high and glared at Lauren with one eye. "Who's your first mate here?" "Arr, this be Rudy." I snorted like an idiot. "Oh, geez, I said that was bad. I'm sorry. So what are you up to this morning?" He was dressed nice like the night we met, but he didn't have on his hat. The humidity hadn't set in, but his hair was still soft and curly. His muscles in his jaw tightened when he took in my question, and I could feel the blush coming over my face. I was thankful when he looked toward the beach. He kept his hands in his pocket when he shrugged, which brought my attention to his seersucker shorts, and it only made me blush more. Unfortunately, he decided to look my way again. "Just walking," he said before noticing my chameleon act. "Are you sure you're okay?" "Sure. Me? Yep. I replied, but I couldn't handle a second of silence with this man. So I made it weirder. "Would you like a root beer float? I have fresh pineapple." "Pineapple? Why, sure, why not?" He laughed and followed me as I led the way inside. I was completely aware of the sound his footsteps made behind me on the old wood, soft, purposeful, strong, and most of all, new. It occurred to me that I could replay in my mind the sound of every version of step sounds I'd ever heard on this patio, and I could tell you who they belonged to. I happened to look back at him as he crossed the front door frame. He reached up to remove the Panama hat that he wasn't wearing, so he ruffled the top of his head instead. To me, this was a good sign. He was good-looking, well-mannered, and had yet to be truly condescending toward my awkward social skills. I could tell he was looking around and had taken in the place. I led him to the small round kitchen table between the small living area and the even smaller kitchen. I tapped the chair that he could sit in. "So, he started, you like root beer floats every morning, or is this your welcome tag?" His bluntness was refreshing. It was an interesting way of describing my nervous behavior. I had felt weird and was wondering why he even took me up on my offer, but he smoothed it over so easily. "I guess it's my welcome line. Do you like it? It's new," I smiled. "I don't know yet. I've never had a root beer float made with pineapples," he replied. His comment perplexed me, and my anxiety came back. I was too embarrassed to admit that one had nothing to do with the other, so I lied. "Really, and here I assumed you were a true Southerner. Well, let me just warn you before you try it, it is good." But secretly I was terrified. I'd had a cherry on a float once, and it was good, so I just kept going. I filled 2 frozen beer mugs with vanilla bean ice cream, slid a pineapple ring down the inside of each one, poured some of our finest local root beer on top, and topped it off with a few more wedges on the side. I set the glasses on the table, and I slid the piano bench across the floor to the table so that I could sit down too. Just as he started to take his first sip, lips puckered out and everything, I panicked and I jumped back. It startled him, and he almost spilled some. I was embarrassed and needed to backpedal that something was important. I laughed and apologized as normal as I could. Chantilly, I asked, hoping he would say yes, so that the sweet topping could drown out the flavor if the concoction of roots and fruit was not good. No, thank you. He took a taste, his eyebrows perked up. He took another, he smiled sideways. He plucked the rim piece off and scooped it into the ice cream before popping it into his mouth. I hadn't even tried mine yet. His reaction was well telling, but maybe he'd had his taste buds burned off as a child from eating too many scalding 50-cent pot pies. Who knows? I tipped my glass and got hit in the face with a cold mass, quickly sat down the glass and used my shirt to wipe off my face. It wasn't very graceful, and I'm pretty sure that I flashed him. It is good, he laughed, so I laughed too. Dang it, I replied playfully. Where do you live around here anyway? That's an all right question. I actually don't. I live in Metairie. I come down from time to time to check on my grandmother. Really? That is so sweet. Is she ill? Not even close. She'll outlive us all. Where does she stay? Not far from here, he replied, but quickly changed the subject. He noticed the memory book I'd been making for Bird. I'd recycled a vintage coffee table book about old firehouses and police stations, decorated the cover with lace, black and gold paint, and silver cowrie shells. He reached over, laid his hand on it, and asked permission to pick it up, and I nodded yes. That's about Bird. This is actually his house. He passed away last month. He was my friend. Lauren carefully opened it, respectful to not tear any of the crafting, and honestly observed what I had done. Bird, that's his name? He asked softly. He answered himself by nodding up and down. He came upon a specific photo with a caption that caught his eye. He read it out loud. Blue Crab Festival, 1998. The photo was of Bird on the curb during the annual celebration with a brown cardboard tray of boiled blue crabs. He was smiling. Yeah, that was probably around the time I met him. He gave me a disposable camera he wasn't using. That was one of the photos on it from before. It was such a nice surprise when I had them developed. He continued to look and read through the many stories I'd written and skimmed the articles from newspaper clippings I'd found in a box after he died. Lauren carefully ran his finger across the glittering ribbons that adorned the separate sections. Part of the book was still blank from any workings, but the last 2 pages weren't and seemed quite moving to him. On the left was a picture of Bird wearing his City of New Orleans Police Department hat, and on the right was his obituary. 2 personalized funeral cards with St. Francis of Assisi and a small bit of dried nettle leaves with Indian blanket petals in the middle. This is truly fantastic, really. I don't even know this man, and I could look at this all day. Thank you. He was my friend, and I miss him. When it gets too hard to handle, I fiddle around with the book. Do you think you could make these for other people when their own loved ones have passed? No, I don't think I could do that, really. It's all a labor of healthy mourning. No telling how long before it's even finished. Maybe never. And this was true. The idea of making a book like this for someone else just didn't feel right. The idea of Bird's book being full made me panic a little. Thankfully, Lauren had some things to do, which means I could get back to doing nothing. Goodbyes with new people were always strange for me, but this wasn't awkward at all. I was feeling a lot less anxious overall in his presence. I sat on the couch and read through the memory book on my own. Okie Doke hopped up on the couch, and Rudy sat perched on the basket handle at the end table. The weather warmed up, and with the screen door open, I could feel and hear the sounds of the October afternoon. I could hear lawnmowers, airplanes, and cars visiting the shops on the beach. I heard the church bell at noon, and I wondered who all had made it to Mass today. I considered taking a walk, but a nap felt better, so I propped up Bird's old pillow and I stretched out. Dreams are an interesting thing. One minute I am in reality, coherent and capable of knowing fact from fantasy. The next moment I'm flying over the Gulf of Mexico, and it never even occurred to me that this could be strange. It felt normal. But what I noticed to be extraordinary was that I saw my late friend. He was on a small shrimp boat in the middle of nowhere, all by himself, eating a piece of German chocolate cake. I flew down to him, hovering just outside of the boat, and I stared at him with my mouth open. If you want a bite, just ask, Bird said. I do, but that's not... Wait a minute. Are you alive? I don't think so. He cut a small piece with a fork, reached out, and offered it to me. For some reason, it didn't occur to me to get closer. Instead, I opened my mouth and I tried stretching my neck as far as I could in his direction, and he stretched his hand, with the fork out, as far as he could in my direction. After about 20 seconds of this nonsense, the plate fell off of his lap and it shattered at his feet. The sound woke me up from the dream, but the sound happened in real time as well. It was the same shattering sound I'd heard earlier that morning. I looked over my shoulder toward the table. Lauren's mug was on the floor in pieces. Okey Doke was still by my side, but also noticed the ruckus, and even though Rudy hopped down to check it out, I was aware that he did not do it. "The dog did it," Rudy balked. "No, no, Rue, broken glass," I scolded. I scooped him up and took him to his cage. I cleaned the mess with a blank mind and tried to lay back down, but I couldn't get a particular thought out of my head. So I showered and dressed. I put jojoba on my face to balance out any oily shine, and I even put on lipstick. I kissed the dog, hollered bye to the bird, and grabbed my memory book. I hopped in the truck and made my way to the Seagull Wing nursing home. I wasn't even sure if what I was about to do made any sense, and I had that wild hair, and the higher self was leading the way. For a split moment, I wondered if I should run this by Claire, but without hesitation, I whispered out loud, "Keep driving." I pulled into the facility and parked. The buildings were old and only one story, with chipped white, brown, and orange paint, but the landscaping was fantastic. Among the pines and oaks that lined the property and ran through the center of it were all kinds of tropical foliage. It took me a moment to understand the layout. The main building had the office, and probably the cafeteria. Most of the little buildings made two scattered lines, one to the east, one to the west. They were many octagon-shaped duplexes for the residents. A courtyard gave plenty of space between the two, and there was even a working decorative fountain in the middle of it all. With so many huge trees, I could imagine the grounds feel pretty decent even in the midst of summer. I checked my face in the visor mirror. Let's go. The front door was a regular door with a safety window and a symbol on the glass of 3 wings overlapping each other into the shape of a triangle. The entrance welcomed me to a wide space with a small check-in desk to the left and a common area everywhere else. I could smell ham, mashed potatoes, and fresh bread. I was regretting not having better protein before I left. No one sat at the desk, but an older lady in a royal blue dress with a name tag that read Diamond made her way to me. She had a wide smile and a very warm energy. "May I have the pleasure of helping you this afternoon?" she asked. She put a strong emphasis on the word you, and I wondered if she was going to try to sell me something. Yes, ma'am," my voice rattled a bit, but I shook it off and dug deep for my southern charm. "Hi, my name is Dearie Lawlerman. I live over in the Bay. I work at Miss Tiki's antique store in town." "Oh, yes, I do love that store. You hadn't been working there long. I'd know you if you did." "Well, usually I work on the weekends." "That would explain it. I'm here every Saturday and almost every Sunday." "What is this lovely book you have?" she asked as she reached her delicate, vein-lined hand out to touch it. Yes, ma'am, that's why I'm here." I set the book on one of the tables low enough for her to see, and I told her the flat-out truth. "This is a book I've been working on. My good friend passed away last month." "Oh, honey, I'm sorry," she interrupted. "Yes, it was hard." "He wasn't here, was he?" she asked as she looked behind herself toward the duplexes. "No, ma'am, he passed peacefully in his rocking chair on the front porch." "Now that's the way to go. Was he sick?" "Oh, no, not exactly." "Was he young?" she interrupted again. I had to rein in the urge to reply, "Well, I guess it depends on who you're comparing it to." Well, no, but actually, yes. Well, anyway, it was sudden and it was pretty hard on me," I said, trying to get to the point. "I had started working on this memory book with scraps and leftover supplies from some arrangements I make for the store." "Over at Tiki's? That's you in the window. I bought me one of those. Come look." She seemed tickled with herself to show off her prize. We entered a short walkway that led to the dining hall. There on a small table, next to a public phone, was a pickle jar covered with glitter and glued-on magazine cutouts of daisies and other flowers. It was holding some abandoned cemetery flowers that I rescued after a storm. It had a single blue oyster shell wrapped around the lip of the jar. On the oyster, in permanent black marker, it said, "Love life. Live love." I laughed to myself. "That's mine, all right," I said with a smile. "It's mine, actually. So, Miss Lawlerman, tell me what you got going on here. I am curious now." We walked back to the table and the memory book. She was flipping through it and having a bit of the same reaction that Lauren did. "Yes, ma'am, I've noticed a positive reaction around my book. Someone asked if I could make them for other people, but I don't think it would work." "No, it's beautiful." "Thank you, Diamond. You see, I ended up with so many leftover crafty scraps from my arrangements, it would be a shame to throw them out. I was wondering if I could lead a craft book hour or two. They don't have to be like this one." Diamond's eyes lit up. She smiled and reached to me, grabbing both of my hands and shaking them gently up and down. "That would be wonderful. I would join too. I've been meaning to put a scrapbook together for my late Harold, but it looks so complicated. I have a shoebox filled with photos and ribbons." She trailed off and became silent finally. "Most people do," I replied. "When shall I come?" I've been at Tiki's long enough now that I can request a new schedule, I said. I was feeling pretty grown up. It was true. What I didn't mention was I was also finally quitting my job at the Speedy Save. How about Monday afternoons, from 3 to 5? We had a family that used to come and we'd make Play-Doh things. It was fun, but they moved a few weeks back. I think it would be perfect. You need anything from me? The only thing I really need is some old books. I thought about grabbing some from the thrift stores, but maybe someone would prefer a binder or a notepad. If I may give you a little bit of advice, stick to the original, I promise. Yes, ma'am. You know what? I have more than enough books. I would love to see what all we can turn them into. That sounds fine. So you'll be here? I asked. I wouldn't miss it. She reached up for a hug, so I hugged her back. It was a celebration, but she didn't know it. I had just did a very grown-up thing all on my own, and it felt so good. I had to hold in my true excitement till I got to the car. When I could, I gripped both hands on the steering wheel, bounced up and down, and squealed through my teeth. The whole truck rocked and squeaked, and of course I hit my head on the rearview mirror. Only my ego was bruised, but just for a moment. I literally did nothing for the rest of the day, and that continued into the night. I was thankful that Lauren visited me. What a difference a day can make. A good intuition is something to respect. I fell asleep that evening sitting up with the book in my lap. I dreamed that I had forgotten to clean the glass shards from the broken mug. I kept looking at it and trying to understand if I'd actually forgotten or if another mug had broke. I heard a strange sound, like broken glass in a small bag being shook. It didn't quite sound like a maraca, but the sound vibe was along those lines. It was coming from the stairs. I walked toward the front door and turned to look up at Rudy in his cage. I could hear the shake, 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 but it wasn't coming from the bird. I made my way up, slowly as I was scared, and followed the sound the best I could. Since Bird had died, I'd only been upstairs to tend to Rudy and look for certain paperwork, like bank stuff. I never slept up here anymore. It didn't feel like the same space. As I walked past the door frame to the room that I used to sleep in, I saw the figure of a man on the other side of the window. Of course this made no sense, but I still did not catch on that I was dreaming. I adjusted my eyes and was able to make the person out. "Bird!" I yelled as I ran to him so I could help him in. The huge double-door window normally opened with ease, but it was jammed shut. I frantically tried to open it, but my finger slipped through the latch. Then, in the flicker of a moment, Bird was on the inside. He stared at me funny for making such a fuss over it. "I can open it if you want me to," he said. I was stunned, but I said okay. He snapped his fingers and the window opened. No problem. "How did you do that? You snapped your fingers. I can't even grab the window lock." "Simple. I'm dead. You're not." "Oh," I replied. It made sense. "Are you really here?" "I don't know. Are you?" he asked, smiling. "I guess so," I barely replied. I heard the shake, shake, shake sound of glass again. "That's my rat," he said. "Can't you stay? You just got here," I cried. "I'll be back. I'm working on some stuff." And then he was gone. I stared out of the window toward the Gulf, wondering where my friend went. I wanted to tell him about Lauren in the nursing home. I wanted to play the piano. I wanted Okie Doke and Rudy to see him. I awoke in real time upstairs. The window was open. I couldn't remember what had happened right away, and I thought I was actually dreaming even though I was awake. I got up and tried to close the window, but it wouldn't shut. I pushed and tugged and cussed and almost cried. I'd woken up exhausted and a bit scared, and I didn't want to be upstairs anymore. I finally got it closed. When my hand touched the lock, I remembered the sensation of my hand turning invisible and slipping through it. My dream started to come back slowly, and I made my way to the birdcage. "Want to come down?" I asked. Rudy hopped to the perch by the little wire door and waited patiently. I put him on my shoulder and continued to replay bits and pieces of my memories until I was standing on the patio, remembering the full dream. Claire was standing by the mailbox. "You okay, girl?" she asked. "I think so. Where's your car?" "At church. We missed you at Mass." "What time is it?" "It's almost noon." "What? I was supposed to be at work an hour ago." "You were? The sun is in the middle of the sky. You can't tell what time it is? Maybe you should call in," she suggested, as she made her way to the house. She smacked a handful of mail into my chest, went inside, and picked up the phone. After a short chat, she hollered out to me that they would be fine without me today. I sighed with relief. She came back out, looking perplexed, and seemed annoyed that I hadn't even checked my mail. "Well," I replied, "I was trying to not do anything at all." "Did you succeed?" "No, actually I didn't." I decided to keep Lauren in the nursing home to myself for now, but I really wanted to talk about my dreams regarding Bird. I let Claire make the coffee, and I sat on the piano stool that was still pulled up to the table. When Claire came with the mugs, naturally she sat where Lauren had sat the morning before. She seemed a little bothered by the chair. She looked around, like she sensed something was there, so I interrupted her with my experiences. "I've seen Bird." Twice now. His spirit, she asked. I could tell by the look on her face she wasn't completely buying it. She was still looking around. Well, in dreams, I think. One of them was definitely a dream. I was flying around and everything. I paused when Claire started laughing. That's a giveaway, she said. Not always. The second one, though, well, I woke up in a different place. I was looking up at the ceiling, but my mind was looking into the upstairs bedroom. Yeah, maybe you were sleepwalking, she said, still seeming distracted with the chair. Maybe. The window upstairs was open when I woke up. I didn't open it. Bird did. In the dream, I mean. He snapped his fingers and the glass doors just opened. But when I woke up, I couldn't get it to close. Claire scratched at her jaw. Interesting. Can we go to your house? I'm hungry. Of course. Do you want to work on your crafts? No, not today. I would like to scoop up some of those scraps in the baskets by the door. Oh, yeah? Do you have a plan for those? You know I do. Care to tell me about it? Not yet, I smiled. I didn't mind that she knew I was up to something. I just wanted to wait until I had a class or two under my belt until I told her. And that is the end of chapter 10. And I hope I see you again in the next chapter, which is going to be chapter 11, and it is called Making Memories and Finding Surprises in Geographical Cultures Magazines. See if you can take a guess. That's a play on words for what magazine I was kind of actually referring to, but I was just pretending. Anyway, all right, so here is my outtakes, and I had a few of them because I was very tongue-tied. Today. Is. So, look, be blessed, be a blessing, blessed be, all that good jazz. And if you're enjoying my book, I would love to hear from you in the comment section. If you want to go over to Goodreads and leave a review, positive, negative, be honest, however you feel. I would really appreciate it. I had to rein in the urge to reply. Well, I guess it depends on... I had to rein in the urge to reply. Well, I guess it compares... Why can't I say this? She seemed tickled with herself to... Why does my mouth hurt? With a brown cardboard tray of blue boiled crawfish. No. His reaction was well telling, but maybe he had his taste buds burned off as a child from eating too many scalding 50-cent pot pies. Wow, I can't read. The photo was of Bird sitting on the curb during the annual celebration. I was too embarrassed to admit that I had nothing. I was completely aware of the sound of his footsteps. I can't read. This strange state was obvious and peculiar. The muscles in his jaw tightened while he looked in my direction. The muscles in his jaw. I hate lingual nerve damage. I hate it. I'm only a page in and my mouth is killing me. Watch them dentist. Upside down, before you turn me, stupid phone, quit resetting.